I enjoyed in the local church just being in different places in an inner city and a rural setting, and finding what I think I kind of already knew, that people were pretty much the same, and those were both good places to be, and working with a lot of young people in Kansas City at that time, and yet an older congregation, and then working with an older congregation for the most part in central Kansas, and just very young at that point, and growing in ministry. The last 32 years with United Methodist Homes, it's just been such a joy working with older adults, hearing their experiences, just such a wealth of experience and such unique experiences that people have, experiencing their wisdom, finding out one thing. I think that they're so much more open. I guess as folks get older, they get a little less, for the most part, a little less strident about what they believe, and working. One of the things that's been really neat for me was working in what's pretty much an ecumenical situation. Obviously, a United Methodist facility. I'm a United Methodist pastor, but through the years, we've gotten to where about half the residents are United Methodists, which means half are not, and finding out that, for the most part, we all believe pretty much the same things. I have stayed away from pretty volatile issues, but there's just a great deal of commonality on most of the essentials of the Christian faith. On a personal level, for me, it's not necessarily one of the things I've enjoyed, but one of the things for me I've gotten a real perspective on aging. I was 31 years old when I came to work with these older folks. We had, I think, 5 people over 100 at that time, and most everybody was 65 and older, and so I've gotten a real perspective on that. And then in more recent years, as that age gap has narrowed, and I'm getting closer to their ages, also having the perspective of every year when I have a birthday, I know I had my 63rd birthday, and I knew somebody that was 50 years older than me at age 63. And so that gives you a whole sense about life and how long it can be, and that person just has a great spirit. They just have a real vibrancy about them, even at this age, and even as life enters its last stages. So it's not necessarily, that's a joy. That's been a real joy and a real wonder for me. And so just visiting with, working with people, sometimes in the dying process. Often I think I've had as much or more influence, touched people's lives perhaps as much in terms of families. I find that most folks, again, in their 80s and 90s, as most of our residents are, they're pretty well settled in what they believe. But sometimes in dealing with families who are dealing with changes in family members, parents, aunts and uncles, dealing with their dying. I sometimes think that I've touched their lives more, perhaps even than residents. That's so important in people's lives, and I've heard people comment about funerals and what they didn't like or what did or didn't happen that should or shouldn't have, and so that's something that I've given a lot of attention to, and that's really important, and that's been I think one of my stronger areas actually is doing funerals, and sometimes people don't have many family. Sometimes they don't have any family. Sometimes that's just a real with families that have been so very close. That's such an important time, and I've tried to do that with compassion and certainly a theological perspective on that person's life and their death and beyond. I've thought about that question a lot. That's a good question, and there are two ways where I've most powerfully experienced the connection. One is through as someone in extension ministry, through my involvement at a local church, which the discipline says we need to have a membership in a local charge conference. And so in the 32 years we've been in Topeka, we've been attended and been active at the same church. And I think that's actually where I've experienced the connection most. And then the other area is in more recent years being a part of boards, committees within the conference. I was involved in the 3 years we were in Central Kansas, in the West Conference, and then just a little bit early on, and had a period where wasn't really involved at that level, but have been, I think, pretty much the last 15 years, and that's been the place that I've really experienced the connection. Sometimes through the involvement with district superintendents, some more than others, but particularly as I was on the board of ordained ministry and then now the district committee on ordained ministry, and that's where I've really been able to have connections with other pastors and lay people, and so I think those two places most dramatically.
Yeah. Well, it must. I've never given a whole lot of thought to it, but it must be an interesting experience and an interesting relationship to be somebody who has been a pastor, who is fully qualified to be a pastor, and is attending a church with a fellow clergyman, but that's not or clergywoman, but
or woman,
right? Clergy person, but not to be responsible for the leading of the church.
It was. I don't think it was too. I don't think any of the pastors that were there over the last 32 years, and there've only been 5, so not a lot of turnover there. But I don't think any of them would think I've gotten in the way. But my first appointment was with someone else, so we were kind of co-pastors for that 3 years. So I really only had 3 years being, totally in charge, and Just from the very beginning, kind of made the determination that, I was just like any other member.
Well, yeah, sure. Well, and, deacons do that
Mm-hmm.
all the time as well. There's, I know several people who are in ministry in some way that attend one of the churches in Wichita that
Mm-hmm.
I'm connected with that, that's their ministry, but their ministry is not in the local church.
Right, and so from the very beginning, it's just been there. If asked to do something, knew I'd never be on staff parish, which was probably just fine, but have been able to serve in any other capacity. I've been able to worship every Sunday, and I really appreciate, I'm so thankful for that, and appreciate that others are not able to do that. It is good leading, as I do, 8 services a week by the time I do every nursing unit and independent residence and assisted living. And I lead that worship, and then to be able to just be a participant, to sing in the choir, to be, on finance committee or on evangelism, or just the same as anybody else.
Yeah, that is.
So that's and I think that's where I experienced the connection, and I'm sure I would have done that even though it wasn't in the discipline. I'm sure I'd have been somewhere at church on Sunday.
Yeah, makes a difference when you're not working on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, and actually for most of the years, I had services at the Methodist home. It's now closed, but I was there for breakfast, presided at breakfast, then had 2 services, one for independent residents and one on the nursing unit, but was finished in time that I could get to church. After the Methodist home closed, all the services at Aldersgate are during the week. And so not only have I been able to attend church, I've been able to be a part of a Sunday school class, sometimes leading that class, sometimes just being a participant. But, that's just been a real blessing with having been where I've been for these last 32 years. And to have my family grow up there and still be in the Topeka area, and to all of us still be a part of the same local congregation. I don't know that I have any really good ideas or striking. The one thing that I would say is for anyone in my situation in extension ministry, really do join up. Do the 2 things I talked about. Be a part. Don't just place your membership somewhere where you go and once a year report, but try and be an active part of that congregation, because there's a support system there through the members there and friendships that are developed that it's hard to get anywhere else. And then the other thing is be a part of conference, get on conference committees and boards and actively participate in that way. Those are 2 areas to really strengthen your own personal connection with the conference and the church and with other pastors and other United Methodists.